It's great to be on the Sage Women podcast again. And today we have Ara Jansen here to talk to us about her experience with menopause. Ara, welcome and thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's going to be interesting, I think.
That's promising. I just want to ask you if you could introduce yourself to us, please.
Sure. My name is Ara Jansen. I'm a journalist. I've been a journalist all my life, and I'm, I guess, currently in perimenopause. So I feel like I have lots of things going on in that space. And I guess as a journalist, I'm endlessly curious about why and about finding out answers, even if they're just anecdotal answers from people that I know. So all my friends have been bugged in the last couple of years with lots and lots of questions about why, what did they do? How did they fix something? How did they help themselves? So yeah, I'm super curious about that.
Interesting that you're curious about other people, and I'm curious about you, and particularly to hear perhaps what were the first signs or that something was going on with your body and or mind.
Yeah, well, I think you can see the first signs. I have incredibly short hair, and this is the first time in my life, well, in my adult life, that I've had really short hair. So pretty much from the time I was about 19, I've had long hair, and I've always loved having long hair. And anyone that knows me will know that I've worn it endlessly in a ponytail for my entire life, and it's one of my favorite parts of myself. And one of the first signs for me was my hair just went insane. Like it got super greasy and I got dandruff. And that really upset me because I liked it so much. And I thought, well, you know what? I can either be pissed off and upset that it's greasy and horrible and I don't like it, or I can do something about it. So after kind of much thinking and a little bit of looking around, I went to my hairdresser and I said, right, this is what I'm going to do. Does this make sense to you, or am I completely losing it? She said, no. She goes, that makes perfect sense. It'll be easier to deal with and you'll be happier with it. And I'm like, okay. So we started cutting and she kind of kept checking all the way up because she thought I was going to have a moment and just completely freak out and run away. But I'd completely decided at that point. I thought, right, this is going to fix things. That's going to make me happier. So yes, hence why I have short, crazy hair. And that kind of got me, I guess, going and got me thinking about, okay, this is the start of whatever this is going to be.
It's funny, as you're talking, I'm thinking that the new hair, which I love, by the way, was a symbol of all of the other things that might change for you. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened next?
Yeah, I guess, I started to see some pretty traditional kind of things or expected things, hot flushes, weird changes in temperature. That was probably for me the most obvious thing. And then the most annoying thing, that as someone who's always slept really, really well, I now get these like just wake up in the middle of the night for no good reason. And, I find that really hugely frustrating, as I'm sure lots of people do. So again, I polled lots of my friends, or at least the ones who were in the suitable age bracket and older, and said, when this happened to you, what did you do? How did you cope with the fact that the doona that you've slept under for the last 20 years, not the same doona, by the way, but the doona, is now, like too hot? Like, how do you fix that in the middle of winter? What do you do? And so those are the kinds of things that, my friends have gotten used to hearing from me.
You're asking a lot of questions of other people. And what does that reveal to you?
Well, I guess it helps me kind of, and again, look, as a journalist, I'm an endless question asker. And part of the reason that I love hearing other people's stories is that it's an opportunity for me to take what works for them and see if it works for me. Like, I kind of think, wow, if you're trying to live a better life, what are the tips I can take from you to help me live a better life, or a more comfortable life in the case of, perimenopause and stuff. I had a couple of other, I guess, things that became really obvious. I had quite a, from a period perspective, I ended up in hospital with uterine hemorrhaging as a really lovely indication that something was afoot. and
Mm.
that in a way kind of just seemed to I guess be the start of a really of my periods kind of just disappearing, starting to disappear. So that kind of was obvious. But look, I suspect, and maybe for a lot of people, things have probably been going on for a little bit longer. They were just super subtle. Whereas then when you sort of started to get into the thick of it, then you got some more of the major kind of stuff, you know. Because of some other things, I can't take HRT, so that never became an issue for me. But again, funnily, polling other people and looking back in my own history, you know, I'm of an age where when we were growing up, HRT was considered really not a good thing. And I've realized how much of a prejudice I've carried along about that in terms of not ever wanting to go near it. Because of all the discussions, I think it was around breast cancer, wasn't it? And soy products and things at the time, right? And I feel like that obviously was a really kind of stuck in my brain message. So when it came time to it, and I started talking to other people who are going, oh yeah, I'm taking it, it's wonderful, and them talking about their experiences, I was like, okay, maybe I have to rethink, you know, my stuff. But but being unable to take it, I've kind of gone looking in different places. You know, I've looked at Chinese therapies, and I've looked at vitamin therapies, and I've looked at other things that that can help me along. But I kind of largely, I guess, feel like I'm just riding it out.
Okay, so you've had some experimenting on yourself based on what others have told you, which sounds kind of fun. And I'm imagining a bit of a science lab in your back room there as you talk about that.
I mean, you know, I work with an acupuncturist, and you know, we had lots of discussions about what traditional Chinese medicine and Oriental kind of botanicals could do. So we found something that I think works for me, that helps me. So as it's a supplement, so I use that. I look at things like I'm a big fan of aromatherapy as well, even if it's just for nice smelling things, but also for therapeutic purposes. I think that for me is helpful. One of the other things, you know, they talk a lot about in the books, things being more sensitive, like you'd be more sensitive to alcohol. I think it's alcohol, cigarettes, sugar, and maybe even spices, I think is the fourth thing.
Well,
and coffee, that's right, yes. So I'm a lifelong teetotal, so I'm lucky I never had to think about cutting out alcohol or coffee. But for me, sugar has always been, you know, a bit of a thing for me. So that's been really interesting, because I've had the odd kind of joint problem or something that's happened, and a lot of it I've helped get better and heal it with, you know, physio and other stuff. But I found the less sugar that I've had, the much better it is. The much better I am. And you know, less pain, I guess, less aches and pains. Not that there's tons, but yeah.
Actually, it's interesting you're talking about joint pain. I've had the experience where if I have a dessert or if I have a glass or two of wine, the next day my joints ache. Have you had that sort of experience, or has it been different for you?
No, I've been healing a knee injury actually, and I actually in the beginning found I was doing work to, you know, muscle work to try and help it and clean it up. And then I started to notice that when I didn't have any sugar, because I love, you know, chocolate and things like that, that it was much better. And so I've gone for periods where I've just, you know, tried to cut out as much as I can, and things have been much better. So I mean, the books say that you can have a more intense reaction to those things that we mentioned earlier. I mean, the science says apparently. So I think that makes perfect sense that would happen. Like I even notice things like, you know, I love Indian food, and often that's very highly, you know, well and highly spiced. And I notice now that if I have, say, some red meat, which I don't have a lot of, but if I have some red meat and it's like a in some kind of spices,
I
that
see.
I'll dream crazy dreams that night. If I have it for dinner, that I'll dream crazy dreams. So maybe all of those things are heightened, like you get that sense of, and the books do say that, so it hasn't surprised me.
Yeah, now one of our in-house dietitians talks about the fact that inflammation during perimenopause and menopause is a significant issue and a contributor towards symptoms. So it makes sense that when you remove those inflammatory things, those foods or drinks or whatever, then you see a change in symptoms. And the fact that some of us are a bit more hair trigger with our reactions to those things than others.
And it can, you know, my own, like you said, my own little petri dish of myself is has shown me that it moves really quickly in either direction. Like you say, you have something for dinner, you wake up the next morning and you notice. And I think equally, if you go 12 hours or 24 hours without something, you notice a difference. I think it's quite quick. It's not, it's not months in the making sort of thing. And I think that's really helpful at this point in time, because you're getting real-time feedback for for how to do better. And I almost feel like it's, without kind of being miserable about it, but I feel like it's an opportunity to kind of get a little bit puritanical about everything, because you're kind of at this point where a whole bunch of things are changing beyond your control. So the things that you have control of, you want to make the best of it. Like I'm determined not to ride this period through being miserable.
Yeah.
Like things can get crappy in moments and you'd have a rubbish night's sleep or something like that. But I'm still kind of like, no, things are good. Despite this, you want to kind of, you still want to have a good time.
Yeah, I'm hearing your determination to forge through it with optimism, and also the fact that you're actively seeking alternatives since you can't take HRT. You're looking at, or you're building up what I would call a bit of a health team around you of people who can support you through this period and maybe minimize or reduce some of the symptoms that you have as well.
Yeah, and I think that's really valuable. I mean, not only at this point in time and not only for women. I think it's a conversation I've had with a couple of people I know that, have those, and I think you and I have spoken about that before, to have that team of people, whoever they are, your doctor, even, your doctor, your hairdresser, your chiro, your whoever they are, that all of those people that you trust and that can help, hopefully give you advice, because they all know parts of their own world. So, to put it all together, and you are also hopefully knowledgeable of your own stuff and your own symptoms, so you can contribute to that, to that relationship. But yeah, I love asking those questions of other people. I think they sometimes think I'm a bit strange because I'm kind of suddenly out of the blue going, hey, can you tell me about this? But I think that's part of it. Like, we've talked about in the past, and lots of people have talked about, kind of demystifying what perimenopause and menopause is about. One of the most frustrating things for me has been, as a journalist, obviously I like to research, I like to read, I like to talk to people. So, I've gone and basically found everything in my local library that I can. I read all the big names and all the people that you're supposed to read. And I guess one of the things that I've come out of it feeling a bit frustrated about is that there's lots of science and there's lots of academic understanding. This is what happens to your hormones. This is how it goes. This is what it can result in. But there's been very little anecdotal evidence or anecdotal stories about how to help those things. Like, do I go down to my local Adair's and say walk in there and say, go and look for the oldest woman that's working in the store and say, hello, can you explain to me what you did when you got perimenopause and you couldn't sleep under your doona? Can you recommend me the right kind of sheets? I mean, I should be able to do that, right? But, it's
probably going to, we don't talk about that in here. But it's true, right? We need to have these conversations, and that's why we're doing this podcast, is to try and bring out more stories and hear what's going on for women and what they actually want. Because it's interesting, there are a lot of people making noise about policies and strategies and programs to support women and work, but we also want to know, what do women actually want? What do they
Yeah, and
need? What's working for them? We need to ask those questions and have people explain their situations, and so that we have that collective sense of, this is okay, and I'm not the only one going through this, and I'm not weird and strange. Somebody else has had that same experience, and we don't know those things unless we tell those stories.
Yeah, I think even from a personal perspective, just again, like I said, going on about kind of sleeping in my doona, because it's been a really significant thing for me. And I've had to practice and go, okay, how are we going to do this? What things am I going to put on my bed? Can I sleep in winter without a doona and just 2 blankets? Like, I've done a whole bunch of experimenting, and it would be nice to find out like what other people do. I read a book by Alison Dado. I think she goes by Dado, which, I'm not normally much into kind of celebrity biogs as such, but I read that one because I thought, okay, hopefully she'll have some practical evidence, as well as talking about, and she did, she talked about how it related to her relationship and her marriage, as well as some super practical things. And again, I've found that randomly one of the more useful books that I've come across because of those things. Again, because there's tons about the science. The science is really obvious. Even when I
doing
yeah, exactly. What are you practically doing? Have you given up wearing socks because it's just too hot? Like, have you had to go and find new footwear? Like, I'm curious about those things. And and again, it helps. All those bits of information help me when I'm searching for some answers, or when I'm going through something, and I can go, okay, well, yeah, like you said, this is not so weird. I'm not like completely losing my mind.
Actually, sorry, I do want to ask, what has been the most successful thing that you've done? Because you've mentioned acupuncture and working with other health professionals and doing your own experimenting. So I'm curious to know, what are a couple of things that you've done that have been really impactful, and how have they helped you?
Yeah, I think, well, definitely stripping, as much sugar from my diet as possible has been good. That's
stripping. I thought, what? Stripping sugar? Yeah, okay.
Definitely, that's definitely been super helpful, and just getting really clear on, on a better diet. But I think, that's something everybody wants to do anyway. So I think that's generally pretty helpful. I've been doing a lot of yoga, and I found that helps me a lot with both strength and, small parts of aerobic kind of capacity as well. And also too, with meditation, which I consider part of yoga, as being a very kind of calming and centering thing, particularly when all of these other changes are, especially when you get to the other side of 50, one hopes you've kind of figured out how your life works, hopefully, or a bunch of things in them anyway. So to have suddenly all of these things taken away that you in some ways have worked really hard across your life to build as part of your character, that can be really frustrating, obviously. Like, you're a person who potentially works in an office or works some way, and you're used to being really efficient and really on it, and occasionally you just aren't. That's frustrating. Music is a huge thing in my life. It always has been. My early life as a rock journalist, meant that obviously I was surrounded by it for a long time, and I continue to love it. I use music as a really, as therapy. I know how to make myself feel better by playing certain things. I know how to calm myself so I'm really very specific about the kinds of records that I play at certain times of the day, and not always, but if I need help, I know how to do that. So that's kind of randomly, that's a really important one. And again, just being really conscious of, I'm a very sunny and positive person. So when those kind of random things, and probably for the first time in my life in a really significant way, dips of emotion or dips of energy, not so much energy, but dips of emotion. So feeling less cheerful and potentially maybe not depressed, but say sad or down.
Yeah.
I have to be really careful, because I have to stop and go, what's going on? Is something happened, or is this something out of my control? And actually, I'm quite happy, I'm fine, but I'm just feeling deflated. And that's been a real challenge for me, because again, I've always operated at quite a cheerful, kind of positive, energetic level. So to have some of that taken away, again, beyond your control, not because you've done something or something's happened in your life. So
and when you're talking about that, what I'm hearing is that you're being very mindful and present with it. So rather than just going about your busy day and going, oh, I'm flat, I'm this and that, you're actually saying, hang on, what's going on here? And you're taking a step back to just reflect on that and kind of rework your thinking about what is going on and how I deal with that.
Yeah, and look, I don't always catch it. Like at the time,
Yeah.
sometimes it'll be 2 days later and I'll be like, what's been going on? And then I'll be like, oh, maybe that's what it was. Because when I reflect back on those last couple of days or the last week, I go, well, nothing bad happened. Nothing terrible came into my life. I didn't break up with anybody or anything like that. Yeah. So you kind of have to go, oh, okay, well, maybe it just was. And so I feel like trying not to catastrophize about those things, and trying to just go, okay, it is what it is, being, like you say, being mindful, being present, and then kind of moving on and going, okay, and then trying to help yourself with the tools that you have, whether it's going and doing yoga or putting on some music, or, I journal a lot. I guess as a writer, I like to write, so I journal a lot. All those things I find kind of help kind of put my equilibrium back. And again, I don't always catch it at the time, but it's always nice to know that it wasn't, that it just was, it was something that happened. And I guess in that Buddhist way where they talk about, trying to feel everything that you're feeling, and then, what it is. And at least, I don't know, I try not to blame too much on perimenopause. Like
yeah, well, I guess perimenopause might be a cause of things, and then it's how will I sit with this now, and what will I do? What will I choose to do, rather than letting it take you over, I suppose.
Yeah, because I'm sure it's really easy for that to happen, particularly for a couple of things to kind of kick in on top. And then if you've got other pressures, in your life and your family and your job and everything, that can be very kind of overwhelming and consuming. Like I said, I guess I'm not interested in ignoring it, but I'm also not interested in letting it rule my life, because I have no choice. It is what it is. It'll be what it'll be. I very kind of excitedly said to my doctor, I started my period really, really early. Does this mean it's going to finish early and it'll all be done? And she said, no. I was like, what? So once I got over that disappointment.
I know. It's funny, isn't it? Someone said to me, I can't wait to not have periods anymore. And I said, yes, but things will follow after that you might not be so happy about. You might have to learn how to accept. So, but there are upsides. I guess before we wrap up today, I've got a couple more questions I wanted to ask you, Ara. One is, how has perimenopause or the symptoms of it affected your work?
Look, I feel like I've been reasonably lucky. They talk a lot about brain fog and things like that. I feel like that hasn't affected me too badly, or that I haven't noticed it. I've definitely had flat periods where I've just gone, I'm just going to go and read a book or lie down. And because I work for myself, I have, the freedom to be able to say that. And if I, break in the middle of the day because it's just not working, I can come back, and spend a couple of more hours later in the day if I need to do something. So I feel like I've weathered that really well. And I feel like, I feel like compared to some of the things that I've read and some of the things women have been through, that I don't have too much to worry about. But I also feel like for me anyway, if I'm taking care of the other things, that tends to not be too much of, an issue. But sometimes, that brain fog or just not remembering or forgetting things or not being able to grab a name or somebody's name or something like that, I kind of go, oh my goodness, I'm losing it. Then I'm like, no, it's okay. It's just, the moment. So, I don't feel like, to be honest, that I've had to work too hard at working around that compared to other people, I suppose. And again, the benefits of running your own business, that you can kind of,
create your own reasonable adjustments.
Yeah, I think so. Compared to being in an office and having to be on, for the time that you're there all the time, I think that must be a lot harder.
Oh, yeah, I agree. I mean, I've had days where I've thought, oh, my clothes feel too tight, even if they're not, and I have to rip my clothes off. I mean, you can't do that at work, can you? No. Or if you have a teary moment, what do you do then? Those are the sorts of things that other women who are working in big organizations or open plan offices might have to deal with, which is a bit different. So it's great that you've had flexibility and it hasn't impacted your work.
Not in that way. I think my symptoms would be stronger in other areas, I feel, rather than that one, oddly.
Yeah. Okay. And I guess my last question is, what's been the best thing about this perimenopause journey for you?
I guess the experience of going through it and kind of, casting about for all kinds of information has helped me kind of go, okay, what kind of life do I want to live from here on in? Who do I want to be? How do I want to look after myself? What's important to me? It's kind of been this, you laughed at me using the word stripping earlier, that I think it has been, like a lot of kind of stripping away of that first part of your life and going into that. I've never been a big fan of that whole use of the word crone, but and I'm yet to find another better option. I like the idea that you can almost stop and go, right, I'm completely in the driver's seat. How do I want to live the next 10 or 20 years of my life? How do I want to set it up? And I'm starting here. And even though there are things that are kind of going against me that I can't do too much about, how do I make this work? Like, to me, that's the excitement of the challenge of that allows you to kind of go, I can remake myself.
Who can I be now? Stepping into a new superhero outfit or a new identity, a blank canvas is what I'm hearing you talking about, the chance to recreate yourself as a new person in some ways.
Yeah. I mean, how, without necessarily, changing your character, but, how do I want to eat? How do I want to sleep? How do I want to exercise? How do I want to live and love with the people around me? How do I want to deal with all of that? I think it's a wonderful opportunity to focus into that and to see what comes next. I think that's the biggest, like, to me, that's the biggest joy that's come from it, if you could say that there is joy in, in this. And again, just being a lot braver to just say to people, hey, tell me what your experience was. How did you handle this? And allowing those stories, allowing people to tell those, allowing other people to tell those stories, being able to be a witness to those people, to tell those stories. And, I've had friends who said to me, man, I've never told anyone that, so for them, I love that they've trusted me enough to tell me that story, but also the fact that they've maybe been carrying it around for a long time and never had somebody to share it with. And I think I think those are the really special things about it. And even though, you get grumpy in the short term with certain things, I think on the whole, that opportunity to remake, that opportunity to go, who am I? who do I, what do I stand for? Who do I want to be for the next piece of, of life? Because whereas, generations ago at this age, we were basically sort of getting closer to dying. I could still have 40 years to go.
Yeah.
So I want to do it in good form.
I
I
love
want to
that.
be able to, I want to be able to kind of ride it with enthusiasm and generosity and curiosity.
I feel like you should start a marketing agency that promotes perimenopause as a good thing. I would love to see the commercial. I'm actually thinking it's so positive what you've just described. And yes, it is hard, and there are things that we go through, and some people have it worse than others. But a lot of people talk about the sense of agency that women get at this time of their lives. And I think what you just described is saying, okay, I've got limited time and energy now. I want to make some positive choices. I get to decide. To me, that's where that agency seems like it might be coming from. And I love the way that you painted this picture of the opportunity of the next phase of life. It's a really great way to look at it.
Yeah, I think it's a chance to just get really clear, and I don't mean tighten the boundaries, but kind of get really clear about what's really important and go, okay, these things aren't, so I'm going to, focus on these things.
Yeah.
I think that's, I've been reading this book recently that's talked about the fact that if 50 is sort of a rough delineator, before 50, you spend time acquiring and building up, and you do all of those things. You have a family, you get a job, you improve, you climb the ladder, you do all that. And then post 50, the author talks a lot about looking into the spirituality of things. And while he's coming from slightly more religious bent, I like the idea of going, okay, this is a chance to look at yourself.
Yeah.
What is this temple doing? What do I want it to do? I think that's the best takeaway from it.
Thank you so much, Ara, for coming on the podcast today and sharing a really inspiring story of your experience. Can we put some links in the show notes to you so that if people want to reach out to you, they can do that? Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. That's no problem at all.
Awesome. Thanks so much again.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. Bye for now.
Take care.